Okay, so this is going to be a slightly different annotations video, okay? So as part of your study of the Sun as a sort of industry and looking at the paper as a whole and all of its background, you have to know about its website and the fact that it has one, and also have a look at some of the crucial pages of the Sun website as well. So what I did in a sort of fit of madness was to actually take a look at the Sun website as a whole, or at the very least its full homepage. Okay, now it's going to be I anticipate it's going to be quite a long video going through these annotations. So what you might want to do is to pause the video after you've had a look at this particular annotated section, because this is sort of what you're likely to find if you view the website yourself. The rest of it is what makes up the rest of the homepage. Okay, so that's my sort of warning that it's going to be a long one, and also that you don't necessarily need all of this information, but I just found it kind of interesting. So let's get started. To begin with, we've got standard things that we would find on a website. All right, so this bar at the top where you enter the address of the website you want to go to is called the URL, and this contains breadcrumbs. So whenever you go to a new page, a new set of information will be added to the URL, and that shows where you've gone and where you've ended up as you've been searching through different websites. So that's not necessarily crucial for you guys to know, but it's important because each individual story on the Sun's website will have its own unique code, and that's one reason why you can go back and find stories from years ago, because that individual code still exists. The tabs that we've got at the top of the home page are for the web browser, so they appear on different browsers that you use, but they open different web pages. We've also got icons at the top that allow us to perform a variety of functions. These aren't specific to the Sun as a whole, but I thought it was worthwhile picking out for you guys just in case you weren't aware. Now, moving into the Sun website, the black banner at the top keeps the house style. So it advertises the fact that this is a company that belongs to News UK. It's also providing a hyperlink to the News UK homepage. It's got different levels of interactivity. So you can see here that there's a sign in button, and that allows us to create a personal account, which means that we can make this particular website something personal to us, and that acts as a draw then for the demographic. We've also got different signifiers on that front page as well. The fact that we've got this UK edition here tells us that there are going to be multiple versions of the website, that the website is worldwide, and that we can get it in a variety of different languages. The website is also an opportunity for us to personalise our news, because we can use the search function to find things that we're automatically interested in, rather than just consuming what's on the page in front of us. Now, we've got page flags that appear regularly throughout the screenshots that you'll see. That page flag moves with you as you scroll. So as you scroll further down the page, that page flag will appear, so that if you need to get back to the home page quickly, you can click on it and it takes you all the way back to where you started. Now, in between the long sort of image that I've taken at the top and then the rest of the information that's going to appear, that separates what's the home screen for me, and the home screen will differ depending on your monitor size, style, and the way you've got it set up. Okay, so the fact that I've got quite a wide screen monitor means that I'm going to naturally have quite a wide screen image, but it's not going to go too far into the actual website itself. Anything that we see below that initial page that we're displayed with is classed as below the scroll. Whatever's above it is above the scroll, because you need to scroll down in order to get more information. Now, different parts of the website are going to be sectioned off with banners, and that creates interest, but it also acts as a way of categorizing the news stories as well. The main story that we've got on the website is celebrity or entertainment based, so we're very much running with the same sort of themes that we would find within a tabloid paper. The main story itself is given the whole width of the page, so that indicates the level of importance that it has. And going back to the banner at the top of the page, so like we had a banner and tabs at the very top of our website as a whole, here we've got them on the home page. So that indicates soft news focus, all right, because we've got right at the very beginning football, sport, TV. Okay, so we don't have anything here about politics right away, and that reflects the interests of our primary demographic. The logo is also the same one, same style, same masthead as we would have in the paper itself, so they're maintaining a house style across multiple different publications. Alright, so the rest of the images that you're going to see, as I said, this is still part of the home page. It's just all of the information that's below the scroll. So we've got headlines for stories that are given in this sort of red, bold font, and you can see those appearing even if you can't read them at the minute, that anything that's in that red font is a headline, okay, and that matches the house style of the paper because it's a red top tabloid. We've also got real-time tags that appear on some of these stories, so just in, exclusive, breaking, and that keeps the information that the audience are getting immediate. Buzzwords like live are included as well to entice the audience because they feel like they're getting something that's not available on other papers or for other websites. Sub-stories for each of the different sections appear in this column or this skyscraper all the way down the right hand side. And that gives us sort of a page grid. Even though we're not looking at a newspaper, it still splits it up for us. Video symbols are included on some of the stories, so that's iconic. We understand that if we click on that, we're going to go to a video, we're going to be able to watch something. Now, one of the conventions that we spoke about when we were looking at the Sun is the fact that it has page 3 content. Although they've stopped doing that, they still sexualize a lot of the images that they include, and you can see that here on the website as well. And this again suits the primary demographic and maybe one of the reasons why the demographic is so young. The smaller images that we've got in the sub-stories are classed as thumbnails because they're so small. So this not only saves space, but it gives a brief overview of what the story is going to include because we get this visual representation before we actually read about it. Coloured circles that you see on the banner, so you can just about see the white circle here, again they're iconic. Many of us see them when we have our mobile phone home screens, so we know exactly what to do here in order to scroll and get more information for this particular section. White space that you can see on both the left and the right hand side is not particularly common, but here it's used to sort of balance out the packed content of the website. We couldn't have the whole of the page filled the way we've got it at the minute because it would just be inaccessible. Other websites that you might find might use that space either side for advertising. So it might be that when you go to a website that would normally have this white space, that huge adverts appear either side. Now, social media is a huge way for the paper to get in touch with the demographic and to allow them to communicate with each other, so we expect it to feature in their stories as well. We've also got hyperlinks included in those banner sections through little circles, so this takes you to a different part of the website, and it's very similar to the forward icon that we would get at the top of the web browser that we had a look at in the previous slide. We've also got a scrolling set of stories that appear under these different banners to give an overview of the section. In some websites, they might move automatically, whereas in others, the demographic might have to be the ones who scroll themselves. Now, further tags are placed on the bottom of the stories. You can't necessarily read them here because I've had to make the images really small, but what they do is again categorize the stories, so it tells us which section of the website they would appear in if they weren't on the front page, and that gives the audience more opportunity to choose what they look at and what they avoid. Now, our first piece of hard news is included quite a way down the home page, so this again is a common convention of tabloids because we expect them to focus more on entertainment than we do on hard news. And the sub-stories for the paper are in the same typography and are in black font, but they give more information than that first story that we've got on the front page. Moving on again then, and we've got quite a few more of these to go, guys, which is why I said you might want to pause at the beginning. Videos that make it onto a main story will play automatically, so as you scroll down and you put your cursor over the top of them, they'll play automatically without the sound so that the audience can get a meaning of what's going on. The home page, as you can tell, is huge. It's much longer than an average website, so this sort of mirrors the paper in terms of its content, and it also suggests that you're getting more as a demographic by coming to the website. Another convention that we've got is that they convey an ideology of the paper. So the Sun in this particular story at the top is criticising police, which is very similar to other stories that they've published, and also what we saw when we had a look at their case study, because they're very critical of public services. Now, a common convention of the headlines is using English techniques, so we'll expect to see things like alliteration or rhetorical questions to get the audience's attention. We'd also expect to see imperatives. Now, these are verbs that are commanding to the demographic. Tell, run, jump, yeah? So it makes us feel like we have to do something. And as mentioned before, rhetorical questions, again, we expect them to come up, but the use of rhetorical questions is important because it makes us question and sort of adds this mystery to a story that means we're more likely to click on it. Silhouettes create enigma, so that's more mystery, and that links to Barth's codes. So the image that we've got here is silhouetted, perhaps suggesting that they need to keep an informant confidential, but it could also indicate that they don't know who this person is. Now, a stand first is an introduction to the story. So after each of the headlines, you can see that we've got bold black writing, and those are stand firsts that give a sort of sentence summary of what's going on within the story. Mystic Meg, interestingly, has been a part of the Sun for a very long time, so we wouldn't necessarily find her on the front page of the paper, but she would be in there somewhere, and this is another draw for the demographic who've got the Sun as part of their day-to-day routine. Now, many stories within the Sun are sensationalised to get an emotional reaction, as we can see down here. The only difference that we've got in the house style compared from the paper to here is the coloured banners, and they are contrasting to stand out, which is another reason for having that white space background. Further hard news stories appear throughout the page. They're split up by a lot of soft stories though, so again, exactly as we would expect to see it. Now, for that fabulous banner, they don't use serif or sans serif, they use what's called a cursive font. It looks like joined up writing, and that's basically something to indicate femininity. It's stereotypically feminine, and this shows that this particular section of the website caters to females instead of males, widening their demographic. Now, when we place images of children and families on stories, it makes the website seem more family friendly despite the content of some of the stories, and it also appeals to the demographic because they're likely to be part of a family or have their own family themselves. Also, there's a mixture of posed and candid images here. That makes it more engaging, because if we mix up the layout and the styles and types of images, we're going to get a different experience each time rather than have everything the same and standard. Now, celebrities and celebrity gossip is a huge draw for the paper. The celebrities all cater, though, to the same demographic as the paper. We've also got a pull quote, which is used to give a personal opinion on the story, and it makes that opinion seem more like fact. So the audience start to view that opinion and take on that opinion before they actually read the story itself. Colloquial or informal language indicates the informal nature of the newspaper, and it's also known that the Sun has a very low reading age. At one point it was low enough that a 7-year-old would be able to pick the paper up and to read the sentences, even if they didn't comprehend what was happening within the stories themselves. Opinions form their own section because a social talking point is how the paper has managed to maintain such a firm readership, but also how people communicate now on websites. So it acts as a way for the demographic to get involved with the paper and the community as well. Now, contrasting images side by side provide this sort of binary opposition that we'd expect from Levi Strauss's theory, and again it contrasts to the headline as well. Now, further contrasts appear in the sub-stories, shows that the style is maintained throughout because we've got individual sections showing these sub-stories, as well as the site as a whole, which uses sub-stories to sort of supplement the main features on the page. This particular image that we've got here is interesting because it uses both direct and indirect mode of address. So the direct address would create a connection with the demographic, whereas the indirect mode of address would create mystery. And as well as clicking on the headline itself, the little arrow symbol next to it could take the demographic to the story. So although it's different, the arrows match those in those sort of section headers in that they take us to a different part of the website. The headline here is sensational. It plays on a well-known cliche to attract and to engage the demographic. We've also got a more muted colour palette here, which matches the section as a whole. So again, we can see how the house style changes section by section, but stays similar to the paper as a whole. Now, the Sun Says is a way of the paper sort of sensationalising its front page stories, but it's also common for the paper itself, and it's a way of them putting across their opinion and bias without necessarily getting into trouble with IPSO. Intertextuality is used in this story as it references a well-known musical, and we have play on words because of that. Some of the positioning of the hard news stories is quite interesting, okay, because we've got a hard news story which then contrasts to the sub-story about Katie Price, which is directly next to it. So there isn't always unity across the whole of this website. The news within the section is also going to appeal to the female demographic. Stereotypically, women are more interested in stories surrounding entertainment news, and also females themselves, which is why we've got an increase in the amount of female sort of images that we've got here. Now, we've got intertextuality here because the headline draws on a well-known 90s TV show, and we've also got those entertainment sort of magazine style stories appearing within the paper or the website, so again varying and widening that demographic. The purple colour that we've got is more mature, so that might reflect a sort of genre of stories that they're going to cover. Again, some of the graphics such as silhouette are repeated, so despite the fact they're being used in different stories, they've got this repetition throughout, so that helps to save money. Now, at first glance, the demographic might not know who the soldiers are, so the text that we've got underneath helps to anchor this image. And then we've also got a collage of moving images here and non-moving images, so that again keeps us interested as a demographic. Putting a face on the story makes it more personal to the demographic, so the people within the image are also using direct mode of address to connect, and the mise-en-scène sort of is sparse. We don't have a lot going on in this image, which reflects the story, so we can see how images are constructed by the paper to put across a particular story. Here is something that the Sun patronised. Okay, so the Sun wants to help, so they've created their own campaign with their own logo. They've made the logo appear more superhero-like because we've got a capitalised serif font, and that in turn makes it more of a soft story, despite the fact that the content would normally place it in hard news. We've got the fact that we've got varied audiences linked here in terms of gender, but also in terms of age, because this story shows a link to the 1980s tension between Russia and the UK. So that puts that older demographic into the paper and widens the demographic here. Now, as well as sensationalising the stories, we've got a way of simplifying them as well. So the scientific story about how this boy has managed to survive is simplified by the pull quote. The header again shows that stories are not necessarily the latest news, they're just the ones that are featuring because of their popularity. And here we've got similar images to page 3, so it sexualises the protagonist of this story. We are over halfway now, by the way, guys, just in case you are die-hard fans and are sticking with this 20-minute epic annotation video. Direct mode of address would make the demographic connect with the story, but the images are unexpected, so they might be upsetting to the demographic. Common conventions of websites are symbols and icons like the semicircles, and this would allow us to navigate the website even if we haven't visited it before. The first indication of any warning to the demographic is here, okay, so especially given that the demographic have had to scroll quite far to see this, indicates that perhaps this is a story that's going to appeal to specific audiences rather than the audience as a whole. Page layout differs between each of the sections. So in the section that we've just had at the top, we've had large sub-stories, while the others take up sort of 3 or 4 to a particular column. Posed images don't always have to be taken by professional photographers, as we saw with the Guardian front page. So you could refer to it here either as posed or candid, because again it lacks sort of professionalism, but the idea behind a posed photograph is that the subject knows they're having their image taken. The focus here is divided. The headline states that the story is about the celebrity's home, but the images contrast this because they all feature the celebrity themselves and they're quite sexualized. The overall layout and house style of the website is included again throughout, so despite the range of stories and the length of the website, we're still maintaining that house style here. Tags within the sub-stories become more random and jumbled as we go further down the page, showing that there's not a lot of the demographic who would scroll this far, just crazy media teachers who want to do epic annotations. A convention of many of the images is to include candid or active shots. So these maintain the informal aspect of the website, although we can't necessarily say that the image of the lion is candid and it was taken without his knowledge. We can say that it's active, he's doing something at the time. Some stories show multiple genres, okay, because this story could be included within the opinion piece as well as being included here. And in this heading we've got a mixture of sans serif like the other headlines, and we've also got a decorative font for the Z within Bizarre. Okay, now the logo here could be one that's used worldwide because there's no reference to it, no reference to the paper itself on it. The fact that the image is layered over something else mimics the logo itself. Okay, so we've got sort of 2 people coming out of one, and we've got that split between the 2 faces here. Now some elements of the website have got similar styles to print pages, so we've got an edited effect on this to make it seem like it's come from a paper. This particular banner is longer than others. This is due to the fact that the section details with the latest stories, so this is the most current and up-to-date, and it's sort of ironic in a way that you'd put the most current and up-to-date stories this far down the website. Colour palette again remains the same, but the grey background has a different shade here to indicate the difference between the scrolling news that's going horizontally across through that banner and then the static stories that we've got on the page. Another good example of anchorage is through the headline here, because the focus is on Jenna's lips, so the images that are included sort of give a before and after, which is another convention of the tabloid genre. We've got an extreme long shot within the image at the bottom. The focus appears to be on the background, but the text anchors the image as the very small figures to the right hand side of the image. The blue colour could also be a link to the Conservative Party that the Sun supports stories, so that would sort of back up that idea as well. Intertextuality is used here through references to This Morning, so the show is likely to be something that the audience are familiar with, given that it's also on an entertainment programme and includes stories that feature within the paper. Now most of the stories that are included under the header are sport related. This would give a good indication of the demographic and can be used as market research as well to see what sells the most. Comparatively, this section is actually quite short, which I'm sure we're all really thankful for at this point. So that gives an indication of the sort of stories that some are likely to publish and those that they're not. The colour of the headlines varies for the scrolling news stories, so they match the section header. We've got a sort of very critical story here. And it's well known for the Sun to be critical of large institutions. It also means that the Sun appear to be supporting the underdog, which is part of their ideology and what keeps them popular. The stories themselves start to get repetitive as well as we go through the homepage. So in a similar fashion to the genres and images that are used in the right-hand column, we've got similar sorts of stories appearing throughout as well. The Conservative Party are well known for supporting traditions and traditional ideology, so the Sun has adopted some of this as their own and focus on Britain as a united country, which is why stories about the war are likely to resonate, particularly with a much older audience. Now, many audiences might subconsciously believe in something called Schadenfreude. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a German word that literally translates as sort of finding joy in other people's misfortune. So whenever you laugh at sort of you've been framed videos and that sort of thing, you're experiencing that yourself. And it's a common convention within the internet to sort of laugh at the mistakes that other people make. And we've got that here within the paper as well. Now, for the editors section of the website, the colours are completely different, and this gives it a higher level of importance, even though it's so far down the home page. Another difference in this section is that the stories are all videos compared to what we've had in previous sections. And we've also got contrast in terms of the images that are being used, because we've got a black and white image here, and this gives it greater significance because it does visually stand out against the other images that are around it. Now, this story up here is an excellent representation of a soft news story because the content is about acne. However, the demographic are potentially going to have suffered from this themselves or still be suffering with it given the young age range, so it gives them something to relate to. The images that we've got in the top story, though, also give a representation of Levi Strauss's binary opposition, and it allows the demographic to bring their own experience to the story because each individual is going to have a different understanding of what the word fat means. Okay then, last one guys, we're finally making it. Another story that's likely to be divisive for audiences is this story here. This is very frequent in terms of tabloids, and it's sensationalized in order to get the demographic interested, even though nothing illegal has actually been done here. This story is likely to resonate with a very female demographic more than males, so it creates a divide with the audience and gets them talking. Further, colloquial or informal language is included in the headlines of the sub-story, so this particular story here comes across as quite aggressive. The hashtag illustrates another method of communicating with the paper, and again it's likely to resonate with the demographic because they're younger, so they'll understand it more easily. As well as Mystic Meg, another historical element of the website is a write-in section to a doctor, so it's like a advice column, and this is what we've got a link to here. So again, another way for the demographic to connect and interact. The real life header suggests that, unlike other elements of the website, all the stories here are real life, or sort of a representation of the demographic's lives. Okay, it provides a lot of relatability, but us as media students and teachers have to remember that they've been constructed to be a representation and are not necessarily true. Now, it's unlikely for most papers to publish straight out obscenities, but for the Sun it can be quite common, and the way that they get around it is by putting those asterisks in so we know what the word is, but they're not out and out swearing. Images taken from mobile phones and apps make it user-generated news, so this is something that's created by the demographic, and it's another way of the demographic getting involved. Now, at the bottom of the website as a whole, we've got the small print, and that's a legal requirement to have on all websites. It's particularly important for news websites because of the controversy that can surround them. We've also got further links at the bottom of the page. They're less important, but they're needed for legal reasons, and the red highlights those that are vital or most important. We've also got two symbols that are very iconic and represent elements of convergence, because these take us to different social media pages where the audience can actually communicate with the demographic. The light grey text on the black background makes it seem more important because it's outside of the house style, and the headings above the hyperlinks are also capitalised so that they signify the importance of those links. Finally, back to the paper for the last two comments that I'm going to make. The section is based on readership figures for each story, indicating what is most popular. However, the stories themselves have got a very niche demographic because they're all stereotypically appealing to females who go on this website. And the two mirrored images here are mirrored in their colour palettes and tones, as well as the actual layout as well. So this sort of stereotypically again appeals to females, and it also assists the demographic in looking at what's going on within that story as a whole. Well done if you have managed to make it all the way through this half-hour epic. As you can see, there are so many key terms for this video. What I would advise you do is you take a copy of the Sun front page, because it will have changed compared to when I annotated it, and see how many of these you can fit in just in that single screenshot. And that's a way of practicing your key terms without taking on board a 30-minute epic annotation like I have. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, you can pop them in the comments section below, or get in touch with me through Twitter at media_revision. And if you could subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Hit the little bell icon next to it and you get instant notifications every time I post a new video. I will see you later for another video.